Okay, so congrats on the new album, The Weight of Man.
Thank you.
Fantastic.
Thank you very much.
Fantastic. What is what does the title mean? What's the theme?
I guess it's whether or not the Earth can sustain the weight of man. The damage we do, the greed, the destruction, everything that we're doing. And whether or not the Earth will give up on us, basically.
Okay. And this
it's
was
a very current topic. Yeah.
So this is the first time you used crowdfunding for it, right? For a new album?
Yeah, I've never done that before. And on the one hand, it was a good thing to do because people, you knew that people were interested in the album, which is always a nice feeling. On the other hand, it means a lot of the records are sold before it goes to chart position. Otherwise, it would have done very, very well. But because most of the sales were not done through retail, they were done through my office. It kind of takes away from that. But on the other hand, people contribute and feel part of it, and that's a good thing.
So since I'm assuming it was recorded during the pandemic, right? So
yes, it was.
Were the parts sent to the different musicians? Is that how it was put together, or were you guys in the same room?
No, we never met anybody. It was everybody did their thing in their own space, and it started off. Most of the songs started off with music. The first 6 or 7 songs just started off as kind of ambient music. There was no drums or anything, and I was kind of writing to ambient music that was created by a guy called Jethro Bodian.
I, like you, stray never too far from truth. We hold on enough to give a real chance to us. Me as a friend, me as a friend to me.
And I found that very, very difficult, but I quite liked the challenge because it took me somewhere else, musically. I started singing different melodies and phrasing things differently, and it was quite a nice discipline. And then, of course, after that, I think it went to my guitarist Ali Ferguson. After that, he started to do some things, and so 1 or 2 really nice riffs, and then after Ali, it went to Nir Z to do the drums, and it was really interesting the way the songs they started as this kind of nothingness, they were just kind of me bluesing along to some ambient music, and then they just gradually more and more made sense, and that was quite interesting for me because I'd never done it like that before. And as I say, it forced me into writing a different way, certainly on the first 7 songs. After that, it's a different process, but the first 7 songs were like that. And when I listen back to it now, I really enjoy it because it's new for me, and I was kind of pulling a little bit from that kind of David Bowie thing that I love, pulling a little bit from Peter Gabriel feeling that I love, and trying to, think in those ways. And I think it comes through in some of the melodic ideas, some of the phrasing, even some of the lyrical content, I guess, as well, is affected by that.
It kind of creates a more open sound with it forces you to take that
leave space.
Leave space, which is sometimes more difficult than just a straight.
Well, I mean, Roger Waters always famously said that it's the space that's the magic, you know, and it's leaving the space in the right places. And of course, Pink Floyd are masters at doing that.
Mhm.
But I've always had a temptation to fill it up, you know, that kind of Phil Spector kind of throw everything at it,
Right.
walls down, you know, and not that I'm saying I'm Phil Spector, don't get me wrong, but you know, that kind of approach, and using orchestration and so on. And on this occasion, it was the opposite approach. It was space.
Was it difficult for you because you're so used to just having, you know, a structure to sit back and just go, you know what? No, let's just let that part be. Let's let it breathe there. Like,
Yeah, it was, and I didn't get it at first. You know, I have to say, I was doing things and thinking, well, I kind of like that bit, and I kind of like that bit, but I don't. What happens here, you know? And it was a very strange discipline, I have to say, but it was a good discipline. And you know, David Bowie famously said that if you feel comfortable with what you're doing, then you're not doing the right thing. And I felt that. I felt uncomfortable with what I was doing. I wasn't sure if it was the right thing. I wasn't sure if it would ever be released at all, or if it was just going to be ideas. I just had no idea. And of course, when you add into the equation the whole lockdown experience and the emotions that come with that, you can become quite introvert, become quite disillusioned, difficult to get motivated, and so on and so forth. You add all of those emotions into the mix. It makes for an interesting process. You know, but ironically, when I listen to it now, I think it's better than anything I've ever done. So, you know, that's the contrast. So
very cool. So you mentioned the lockdown. So I mean, you famously toured a lot, right? And so
yeah.
what kind of effect did that have on you? Did it have a personal effect on you that you couldn't get out there?
It was brilliant.
Oh, it was?
I was like, thank God for that. I have some peace. Because it's been, you know, just relentless for years and years now. And I have quite a lot of people working with me, not only the band, but crew and people in the office and so on. And, you know, you have to keep the machine going. You can't stop. And as much, I've never been a slave to the music industry, thankfully, certainly not for a very long time. So I can make decisions myself. But of course, the other side of the coin is that it's all on me, you know. I have to keep it moving. And if it doesn't move, it's my fault. And if, you know, when it's going well, I benefit from it. But it's all on me. And so the lockdown, when it started, was like, oh, yes, you know, this is a pause.
Right.
Of course, you know, the pandemic was a scary thing for people, of course. But in terms of time off, I enjoyed that. And of course, you know, I was doing, like so many artists, playing some songs online and whatnot, and doing stuff like that, which was kind of fun.
We've been through some things together, the trunks of memories still to come. We found things to do in stormy weather. Long may you run, long may you run, long may you run, although these changes have come.
And then I would say we got to the summer, we had some concerts in the summer, 2020. And then it all shut down again at the beginning of October. And from that period, that October, November, December, January, February, March, April was shit. You know, there was nothing good about that. I was still working on this album. I mean, it was still enjoyable, but it was like, okay, enough. You know, it's enough now. I think we need to do something again. And see people again and talk to the audience, and, you know, just get some of that feedback that we need as artists, you know, for for our ego and for our sanity. So I think the second lockdown, if you like, was very tough for everybody, not just for me, of course. But and of course, where we are now, it's, you know, I'm touring again through the summer. It's been progressively better. At first, it was very slow ticket sales, and people were very nervous. My audience are mostly over 50 years old, you know, so they're obviously wanting to take care of themselves. And it was very slow. And then more recently, it's been very, very good. And of course, now we're moving into the autumn where we're going back inside again. And there's different rules and regulations in different places. Poland, ironically, the COVID numbers are very low here, but everybody's expecting it to go very high again quickly. So we're back to that indecision and lack of clarity, but I don't think it's going to be so bad. The vaccination, whether you love them or hate them, has definitely made a difference.
Oh yeah.
And it's, you know, in my profession, and your profession probably too, it's a lifesaver, you know, because without people being vaccinated, we just can't work. You know, we have to do the summer and that's it. But when you go into a club, it's impossible, you know, without people being vaccinated. And as I say, many people hate this. I mean, I'm no great fan of it myself. I don't want to be vaccinated unless I have to be. But I recognize the importance of it. And for the music business, we really don't have a choice. It's either we do it or we disappear.
Do you
It
feel
really
it?
is.
Yeah. Do you feel as a performer when you're on stage? So recently, like last week, when you're touring, do you feel that nervousness in the crowd when you're on stage?
Yes.
You can feel that vibe when you're.
You see it. You know, ironically, it's, you kind of see it at the beginning, and then of course as the evening progresses and people start to forget a little bit and get involved in the music, you can see people loosen up and lighten up a little bit, you know, and maybe even stand up off their seat, you know, which sounds such a simple thing to do, but people are reluctant to do it. And you know, you see some people with masks on, some people without them on. And there is undoubtedly a nervousness, but by the end of it, it's all gone. You know, that's the beauty of it. It really is a release. It's a release for us as a band, of course. It's a release for people, just to forget about this misery for a couple of hours or so. You know, is a nice thing. And what we see here is going into the autumn is more of this this 2G approach, which is you're either vaccinated or you're recovered or you don't get into the room. You know, it's as simple as that in many places. And of course, that's really hard on people who are not vaccinated or perhaps cannot be vaccinated because of health issues. It's tough on them. I understand this, but it at least allows you to continue. So I haven't experienced this yet. You know, this what they call in Germany, they call it 2G. You know, it's this vaccinated or recovered from the virus. I haven't actually been in a room where that's been the case yet, so it'll be interesting to see how that feels.
Yeah.
But regardless of how it feels, it's the only choice. There is no other one.
That's right. So you were born in Scotland, and I read, and correct me if I'm wrong, but you're not a trained singer, right?
No.
So were you born into a musical family?
Yes. Many of my family either sang or played guitar, or my grandfather, to go through it, my grandfather played violin. My grandmother on the other side of my family was a singer, professional singer. My father sings, his two brothers were both professional musicians. My brother plays guitar, obviously, with me. Mm-hmm. On my mother's side, her brothers were musicians. You know, there's a lot of them. And it's not uncommon in Scotland or Ireland to have that kind of musical family. but we certainly had it, and I started singing. I suppose my first performance I remember was singing Bohemian Rhapsody along to the record by the Christmas tree when I guess I would have been, when Bohemian Rhapsody was, what, 76. So I guess I would have been 8 or 9 years old. And I sang the song along with the record. You know, it's my first memory of singing. And then from that point on, I was in choirs, school choirs. I was in a church choir. Not that I'm, a religious person, but I was in a church choir. And then the real blessing was that my high school, they had rock concerts 3 times a year. And basically they had a good music department. They had drums, bass, they had synthesizers going on, which, back then was, I mean, when I was at school, I was born in 1968. So, to have synthesizers was quite something. Mm-hmm. But they did have them. And so, a lot of the kids got involved in bands, whether it was punk or new romantic or metal. I was a heavy metal fan. I was also a Bowie fan. So there was all these different types of bands, and I got involved in quite a few of them. Any excuse to sing, and I was singing, and because I realized that the one thing that I was naturally good at was singing on stage and standing there and doing it. But it was just, it's just a God-given bit of luck, nothing more than that. But I do work very, very hard. I always have, on whatever I do. I've always worked very, very hard. So I think that, combined with being lucky that I had a voice, working very hard, and a couple of bits of good fortune along the way, that's been my life.
So that group, Guaranteed Pure, did that come out of those rock concerts? Is that where you met them?
Well, Guaranteed Pure, when I was born in a small town called Dumfries, which is where my high school was. And Dumfries is about 40,000 people. It's actually famous for Robert Burns, who was a very famous Scottish poet, lived there. And Calvin Harris, who's the biggest DJ in the world, who's also from Dumfries, ironically, although he's much younger than me. So actually, musically, it's got some real claims to fame for such a small town. But anyway, I moved from there when I was 17, and I went to Edinburgh, 500,000 people, slightly bigger city. My father was living there. And that's really when I started to get involved in bands that played in clubs and bars and so on. Guaranteed Pure was created by myself and a piano player. I used to go to a piano bar called Fingers Piano Bar in Edinburgh, and they would have a different piano player every month. And this guy, Paul Holmes, was playing one month. We became friends. I got up and sang Desperado or something, Eagles or something like that. And we started to talk about creating some music together. And that was how Guaranteed Pure was formed. And we worked very, very hard, full-time professional band, 5-6 nights a week doing gigs. Didn't really get the break. And then it kind of stopped. And when it stopped, I auditioned for a band called Stiltskin. Mm-hmm. And 4 months after that, I was #1 in the charts in the UK and around Europe. And that was the beginning of my commercial career, if you like, when I went to the next level. And then when that stopped, I was approached by Genesis to audition to replace Phil, and then I got that job as well. I did 2 auditions, one for Stiltskin and one for Genesis. I got both of those jobs and at different times. And then after the Genesis thing ended, I started my own solo career, and that's about 20 years ago now.
So when you're in Stiltskin, did you, like right before that, leading up to getting that audition, did you have a musical mentor in your life that you would turn to, whether it's for training or just emotional advice? Or not really?
Not really. I mean, my brother's musical, and he's a little bit older, so I guess he was my closest. ally in that regard, and but not really. I mean, I think I was very driven, very arrogant, single-minded, all of those, you can call them qualities or failings, whatever, but on the one hand, they're failings, on the other hand, they're necessary. So I had so much self-belief that I don't really feel I ever needed that. It didn't mean I always got things right, far from it, you know, but I always thought I was getting it right. So, you know, that was good. And I mean, that it was that self-belief that basically got me the job with Genesis, because it was my confidence. I mean, my voice obviously is nothing like Phil Collins, a bit more like Peter Gabriel perhaps, but I certainly couldn't sing the Phil Collins songs in the same key as he had recorded them. So there was that setback before we even started. And I said, look, guys, you know, these songs are too high for me. So let's start knowing that, you know, we need to drop the key a little bit. I've got more bottom end and depth in the voice, but not so much as Phil has in the high area. So we dropped the keys, and I was so full of confidence anyway that I think Mike and Tony felt comfortable with me, you know, that I had the balls to do it. And it was important to have the balls to do it, because obviously Phil Collins at that time, and you know, even still to some degree, but at that time he was one of the biggest names in the world, you know, and I had to step into his shoes and try and make it convincing.
Were you a big fan of theirs when you got the audition, or?
Not really, no. I mean, I would say a moderate fan of them. I did have Trick of the Tail. I love Trick of the Tail, still my favorite Genesis album. And I had Selling England by the Pound, and I think also what's regarded as the Genesis album with Mama and That's All on it. I think those were the three albums I had. I was more of a fan of Peter Gabriel. I had a lot of his music and a little bit of Mike and the Mechanics, just because of their hits in the 80s. You know, I think I had one of his albums. So, you know, I would say a moderate fan, but not a die-hard fan. You know, someone would come and talk to me about the album Duke, and I wouldn't have a clue what they were talking about, you know, and I needed to learn it. And you know, the history. And I found that when I look back at it now, it was always quite daunting that you know, the people in the first 3 rows of the audience knew much more about the band than I did, you know, and they had, you know, I could see them singing lyrics. It was quite off-putting sometimes that they knew the lyrics better than I did.
There's like a human cue card in front of you in case you forgot something.
A little bit, yeah. And you know, the drum fills were there with the you know, everything. So you didn't need an auto. What's it called? Not auto cue.
Oh, the teleprompter.
Teleprompter, exactly. You didn't need a teleprompter. You could just look at the guys in the front row. They were mouthing the words for you. So, you know, that was a strange experience. But, you know, after, I think we did a tour of 44 shows, or 44 or 45 shows. And I really felt that by the time we were getting into the later stages of it, we really were becoming a band. Not only me, but with Neersy on the drums and Anthony Drennan, who's a wonderful guitar player. I really love his guitar playing. We really were starting to become a band. And I was kind of getting comfortable with my own style of how to do this, you know, because it was sometimes Peter, sometimes Phil, sometimes my stuff. From the Genesis world, and I was having to find a way to bridge that, and I got better at it as time went on. And there was some songs like Invisible Touch and stuff which I hated, and I could never really sing properly. It just wasn't me, you know. It's so much Phil's style of singing. And then there were other songs that worked extremely well. You know, like No Son of Mine, which again is a Phil song, but I sang it very convincingly and naturally. Mama worked very well, which was important.
Can't you see me, Mama, 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 please? Can't you feel my heart? Can't you feel my heart? Can't you feel my heart? Oh. Now listen to me, Mama, Mama, Mama. You're taking away my last chance. Don't take it away. Can't you feel my heart?
Some of the Gabriel stuff sounded good, you know. So it was just as you would expect. It takes time to get yourself settled into it. But as I say, by the time we got towards the end of it, it was really sounding good. But you know, the powers that be kind of took over and kind of threw cold water on it, which was a bit of a shame, because it could have developed a little bit like Marillion did, you know, when Fish left, you know. I don't know so much about the early stages of when Fish left, but you know, I know the band's developed and created a really good following, and it's a good live band, and people, you know, they have good fans. We could have done the same as they did, perhaps on a bigger scale, because Genesis were obviously a bigger band.
Mhm.
But we didn't, you know. And it has been suggested often that it might have been a good idea to have changed the name and not used the name Genesis. And I remember at the time, Mike and Tony were thinking about this, and I thought it was a kind of stupid idea. But actually, when I look back on it, it might not have been such a bad idea after all. It might have been a good thing. It would have taken some of the pressure off, because the pressure was too great. It could never work, you know, unless we'd written, you know, Back in Black like AC/DC did when Brian Johnson took over, and they'd replaced, you know, Phil with somebody who sounds like Phil, like AC/DC did with Bon Scott and Brian Johnson. If they'd done that, that might have been a better idea for them, to be honest, than using me. But I think, you know, Calling All Stations was a good album, not a great album. Not like, you know, not like Back in Black's a great album, and Calling All Stations is a good album. That's about sums it up, I think. But it showed a lot of promise. I think there were songs on there like Calling All Stations and One Man's Fool and Dividing Line and stuff. Showed a lot of promise, and I think the next album could have been really quite special. But of course, we'll never know.
Right. And then you did the Genesis Classic tours, which was great when you brought in the string players, and it kind of brought a new energy and drama to some of those songs. And like Calling All Stations, I'll use an example. I think with that arrangement, I think it sounds better than it does on the studio album. I think.
Yeah, I mean, the Calling All Stations, for me, the keyboard sounds, a lot of them I don't like. It wasn't vintage Tony Banks. He creates so many great keyboard sounds, but on that album, it was just, I don't know, it didn't really happen. Sometimes it did. There was one, you know, there were occasions, but not that kind of magic that you got, especially in the 70s. You know, the kind of analog keyboard sounds are still the best. They still sound the best to me.
Mm-hmm.
And you know, Tony didn't really do as well as he might have done, I think, in terms of sounds. And they were kind of stuck in between whether to be retro or to stay kind of modern. They didn't really know what to do, you know. So you'd have a song like If That's What You Need on the same album as Dividing Line and Calling All Stations. They just didn't fit. Even Not About Us, which is a nice song, and I wrote it with them, I didn't think that belonged there either. You know, I think we should either have gone one way or the other. and we kind of got stuck in the middle. And but you know, that's you know, it's easy to say now. When you're in the moment, you try your best and you do what you do. But I think when I started this Genesis Classic idea, which was just a bit of an accident, I had a request from a beautiful palace near Dresden in Germany. They did this big classical music event, and they'd asked if I could do some Genesis songs and add in a string quartet or whatever. And I was like, hell no, you know, why the hell would I want to do that? And you know, I could hear Tony Banks screaming at me for even thinking about doing something like that. I could hear him in my, you know, in my mind's eye.
Right.
But I thought, okay, why not try this? And I got a German guy, a Berlin guy, to do some scores and stuff. And it was quite interesting because effectively what we did was we took away Tony's keyboard parts, the sounds, not necessarily the parts, but the sounds, and replaced them with a string quartet and piano, classical piano. And that's how we started it. Of course, the band was, you know, guitar, bass, and drums and stuff, but that's what we did. We took away if many would argue, the best thing about Genesis, which is Tony. We took it away and kind of replaced it with classical instruments and a piano. And as the years have gone by, we've kind of fused it a little bit with a little bit of the kind of synthesizer sounds and the violin quartet approach. And some of the songs are really great. You know, as I say, like we were saying, Calling All Stations, it works extremely well like that. And it's quite interesting, and it's a bit different. You know, nobody else does that. And people kind of like it. So, you know, at the end of the day, it's a way to go out and do shows. People buy tickets, so it works financially. And it's become what I do as a Genesis person, you know, that it becomes my thing. You know, Steve Hackett does it as it was in his time when he was there. He does it very well. And of course, Genesis, they are doing what they're doing, and I do it this other way. And it is quite interesting, you know. It's got better as the years have gone by. Some songs I got rid of them, and other songs I've kept because they're very strong.
Mm-hmm. So I want to tell you a quick story. In 2003, I spent the summer at Berklee College of Music for their performance program. And at that time, iPods were just coming out from Apple, and your album Change was released that year. And it was the first album I ever put on my iPod. And I used to take that every day and walk up and down Boston listening to that. It was the first time I was away from home, like for real. And it was like, it was a big change in my life. But I was always curious that I couldn't figure out the theme of the album, if it was a change in a relationship or if it was a change that this was like your first big solo album after Genesis, like, and maybe there isn't, and it's always sometimes a good thing that you can't decipher, you know, what a theme is.
Yeah, I mean, I think it is quite good when you just decide for yourself what something means.
Mhm.
For me, it was a change in life. You know, the 90s for me were where I had more commercial success with Stiltskin and Genesis, and I'd been in the music business world. And then when I started a solo career, I really went back to the beginning, and I had a 2-year period where I really did nothing. I just, you know, lost is the only way to put it, lost and depressed. And I did one concert with the Scorpions and the Berlin Philharmonic Orchestra. They invited me as a guest, and it's the only thing I did in that 2-year period. And when I started back again, it was at the Edinburgh Festival. We played in a local bar with 100 or so people, 110, 120 people, sold tickets at the Edinburgh Festival, Arts Festival, and did acoustic shows. And I'd written a few songs at that time. Change was one of them. And I kind of mixed it with some acoustic versions of Genesis songs. And I did Biko from Peter Gabriel acoustic and In the Air Tonight acoustic from Phil, and just did a show like that and told stories about the music business. You know, some of them were quite funny. And I did a show like that. We did 11 gigs, 11 nights, 9 or 10, 11, something like that. And anyway, change was kind of being created all around that time, you know, when I was rediscovering myself. So it's you know, I say in that song, for example, I say, I don't think that I can change because this is what I am, you know, effectively. And I was looking for that 2-year period. I was looking for a new direction of, you know, maybe doing something else and not being a musician anymore, because I was so disillusioned by it at that point. And then I found out that actually I can't change. This is what I am. You know, I just have to make peace with who I am and not fight myself, you know, try and become something else. Just make peace with who I am and take control of my life. It was a big thing for me, very important, which is why I didn't want to be signed to record deals and stuff like this. Just take control of it. And I started acoustic. It was cheap. It was easy. I didn't have any pressure, and slowly built it up. And over the 20 years, you know, things have gradually built and developed, and the album releases, you know, I've done quite a few over the years, and I've kept control of everything. I just never ever let it go. And okay, in some ways, it might have been better to have, you know, allowed somebody else on, but I was always afraid of letting someone else control my life. I just never ever wanted to be in that situation ever again, even if it meant I had less success as a result of it. I was prepared to sacrifice any success for just having control and peace.
Mhm.
And that's been my approach. And change is very much me coming to terms with who I am. This is who I am. I'm not going to change. It's the way I've always been. There's nothing I can do about it. Make peace with it and move forward. And that's what the album was really based on.
Cool. Very cool.
Mm.
So this current tour, I noticed on your website that each night you post the musicians that will be there.
Mm-hmm.
The roster. Is there a reason for that?
Yeah, well, I have musicians. I live in Poland now, in Poznan. I've been here for 13 years. I have some Polish guys in the band, some German guys sometimes as well, and Scottish. And sometimes, you know, the show is small, so we can't put everybody in there. It doesn't work financially. So it'll maybe be 3 of us, you know, acoustic thing. And sometimes the show's bigger and we can have 8 of us or 9 of us. So just so it was clear for people, because some people are fans of Ali Ferguson, my guitar player from Scotland. Some people like Uwe Metzler, who I did the album Song for a Friend with. Mm-hmm. So people could see what it was before they went. Just kept it clear for them who was going to be there. And of course now over here, because Brexit happened, it's brought in the whole visa thing. which we never had before. And of course, COVID as well has made traveling very difficult. So right now, it's pretty much impossible to work with the British guys right now. So it's just me and the Polish guys, and my brother, who lives in Germany now. He became a resident of Germany. I became a resident of Poland, so that we can continue to live and work in the EU. Because if we were back in Britain, we wouldn't be able to do that without visas, and that would be a bloody nightmare. That's the reason.
Okay. On my channel, I asked if viewers can submit questions. So I have a couple submitted questions. The biggest one that I got was, will you ever tour the United States?
I mean, I would like to, but you know, I've just never had it. I never had success there. So, you know, I'm 53. It's not likely to start now, unless there's some freak of nature. You know, somebody uses it in a movie, and all of a sudden I become well known in America. There will be a bit of an audience, of course, because of the Genesis fans who know me through that. But there's just not the market there, so that, you know, I don't get the offers, and that's it in a nutshell, really. You know, I mean, I could of course go to America and play to 20 people in some room somewhere, but you know, what's the point?
Right. Okay. Well, there you have it.
Yeah.
Your favorite song to perform in front of a live audience?
Oh, that's a good question. I mean, I always feel like that with the song Inside, which was the big hit from Stiltskin. I always feel, you know, when I was younger, I was really into heavy metal. You know, I liked that aggression and passion and power. And the Stiltskin sound had a little bit of that kind of post-grunge feeling about it, and I missed that. I was very natural at that, you know. And when I joined Genesis, it kind of softened my sound, if you like, you know, because that's not what they are, of course. And then after that, after the Genesis thing, I kind of ended up producing somewhere in between what I wanted to do originally and what I had become, you know. And so the music became a little bit somewhere in the middle of that. But I do miss that kind of anger, passion, and just volume. I do like that. I would be very much at peace, you know, performing in a Thin Lizzy tribute band or something like that, you know. Phil Lynott, I loved Phil Lynott, and when I sung one time at a tribute to a Scottish singer called Frankie Miller, who had a stroke. And he had a stroke when he was together with Joe Walsh in a hotel room. I think that's the story anyway. And they did a tribute concert. And Joe Walsh performed, and I performed as well. And I did the song I'm Still in Love with You, which is a Thin Lizzy song. It's a really nice song. And I did it with the guitarist whose name's gone right out of my head. Anyway, people will know the guy who played guitar on that track. Forgotten his name. And I was singing the Phil Lynott song, and I thought, oh, I love this. I felt really great, you know, just doing that song. So, you know, if I was singing in a rock band or even something grungy, you know, a Pearl Jam tribute or something like that, I would feel very comfortable in those shoes, you know. That would fit me perfectly. And yet I don't do it anymore, which is a shame.
I thank you, Ray, for your time and doing this.
It's a pleasure. Very nice to speak to you. I'm sorry about the last time. I just got waylaid with so much stuff, you know.
Don't worry about it. So best of luck the rest of the tour.
Thanks, my friend. You take care of yourself.
Okay. Thank you.
Ciao, ciao.
Bye.